Hello, and welcome to the Double Your Freelancing podcast. I'm your host, Zach Swinehart, and I'm here today with Josh Starr from joshstarr.co. And that is Starr with two R's, so I'm just going to spell it, JOSHSTARR.co. Today, he and I are talking about cold email, cold outreach broadly, but cold email specifically. And I'm really excited for it because we were chatting in the pre-interview. So in his various agencies, he has added over $2.3 million in lifetime value from clients generated from cold email for his graphic design subscription service. So the 2.3 million is just graphic design subscription service, yeah?
Yep, that's right.
Wow. And get this, his agencies have worked with over 3,500 clients over the years. Crazy. And they did the e-commerce build out for Walmart.com, and he's worked with like Coke, Pepsi, Kellogg. And I don't know if you generated those leads through cold email. I guess we'll learn soon. But yeah, so today we're basically going to go nuts and bolts on his cold email strategy and learn how to do what he does. So, Josh, welcome. Nice to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to chat and share a little bit about my journey and how I can help you guys land some clients.
Awesome. So I recently heard some podcasters say that it's a big pet peeve of theirs to like go on a podcast and ask someone for their story, like tell me who you are, what you do. So I'm experimenting with just not doing that. It feels kind of weird though. So I'm going to ask you this. How/when on your agency journey did you get started with cold outreach? Like, was it the first thing you did where you got your first leads? Is it something you did down the line? How'd you get going with that?
Yeah, so I started kind of in this field maybe 20 years ago, so it's been a while. I started the cold email maybe 3 years ago, just based off of, I think, the need of referral sources drying up for a season. And so I was testing, hey, the referrals are working normally, but what is kind of a cold strategy that I can go and meet my clients directly? So it's out of like a need, honestly. I know it's kind of at the beginning of the cold email. Like now it's more established, but back then 3-4 years ago, like it was totally new. So it's kind of like a wild, wild west of what's going to work. So a lot of the stuff that I've learned is just experimentation of what I've done and what's worked well. It's way more established. There's a lot more software now that does it really well, but 4 years ago, man, it was like figuring it out on the fly. And obviously everyone reads emails. So it's like you're going directly to the potential customer as opposed to ads. They're typically passive and they're not really going to convert that well with high ticket stuff. But email, I found, converts really well for high ticket sales. So
Cool. And it sounds like, I'm not super sure on this, but it sounds like your cold email. So I mentioned to you in the pre-interview that Delia has done it a lot with like agency partnerships, but it sounds like your cold email strategy is not like agency partnerships, influencer partnerships. It's direct to the end client. Is that right?
it is, yeah. Yeah, and that's why I started it, is being an entrepreneur myself. You're always kind of looking for, how to generate leads, how to make sales, how to grow your businesses and things that you start. And so I started it to generate sales for my own businesses. And so now, because it's worked so well, I don't typically partner with other agencies offering this as a service. I'm going directly to potential customers now and saying, hey, I could do this on your behalf. I can find leads for you doing cold email outreach.
Cool.
Yep.
So if you wanted to walk through the strategy, I mean, for me, I think it would maybe be helpful to have the kind of really zoomed out, like imagine we are creating an outline of all the steps in your flow. I'd like to have those high level steps. Like first, step 1, you find someone by doing this. And then step 2, you reach out to them. And then we could zoom in a little bit. Does that sound like a good flow to you? Or how do you envision sharing your strategy with us?
Yeah, I think that's good, going over the high level steps. Typically what I start with normally is right off the bat, what are you trying to sell? That cold email, you can exclude right off the bat, you can exclude direct to consumer. Like it's just, cold email does not work for B2C at all, typically because the market is so big maybe, and the sales, the average lifetime value is so low. So if
Yeah.
you're trying to sell like an e-commerce product, you're trying to sell something that's maybe even less than $1,000, the finance just doesn't fit. So if you're trying to do maybe B2C and the lifetime value for that customer is more than $1,000, maybe you're selling a package of things or you're selling over multiple years, then it might still work. But cold email normally works with B2B and selling a product or service that's north of $1,000 or $2,000. That's typically so high
which
level. We
gives,
can go as long as you start there, then we go through the whole
yeah.
process.
And the nice thing is that, like, frankly, it's hard for me to imagine a freelancer who wouldn't meet those two criteria. Like, yeah, lots of freelancers have stuff under $1,000, but like, I think it's a pretty established tenet at DYF that you should pretty much always be B2B if you're a freelancer. I think the obvious exception is like, say, wedding photographers. But in general, I think most of us listening today are B2B and can certainly conceptualize what it would be like selling something over $1,000. So let's get some context first, though. So I know you have several different agencies. So at joshstarr.co, is your sole offering you helping other agencies with cold outreach, or do you have like other products there, or is that brand, it's just for that thing?
Yeah. Yeah. So I know you've probably heard, obviously, the productized consulting or the productized services. That's basically what joshstarr.co is, where because I've done this on my own so often, I was like, instead of doing a single landing page on my other agency site, let's put that all on joshstarr.co. So I do this for other agencies, other software companies, where they bring me in. I'll look at their whole sales process, who they're targeting, and I'll do the cold email campaigns for them on their behalf, booking their ideal customer for them.
Okay. So let's get the landscape. So I would like to know the contexts, like all the different contexts where you have generated leads for yourself with cold outreach. So I guess as a starting point, for your clients at joshstarr.co, do you get those? It's like really meta. Are you doing cold outreach to people for whom they are then hiring you to do cold outreach?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah. So I do have some screen sharing stuff that I was going to walk through, and I was going to walk through that campaign.
Okay, cool.
One of the campaigns that I started in July of this year ran for, I think, 45 days or 60 days. So I have some metrics where with joshstarr.co, I went out and I was targeting my ideal client that I want to book cold emails for. And so this, we can walk through the steps, but it's basically some of the analytics on how well that campaign performed, my outreach strategy, the messaging, the follow-ups, booking the meetings and landing pages and all that stuff. So that might be a good case study of, hey, I'm eating my own dog food. Obviously, it's like I'm testing this myself, and here's the results that I generated for myself doing this.
Cool. But I want to get some context beyond that also. So like you've done it for joshstarr.co, but of your different agencies, which ones, like what are the service offerings of the other agencies that you've also driven business to with cold outreach? So you mentioned Pixel Painters, right? That's all cold outreach so far?
Yeah. So that was kind of the beginning of my journey. In 2019, I started Pixel Painters in 2018. And at the beginning of any sort of agency, you're using and you're leveraging your existing network. So I had a pretty extensive network of ideal clients that I just literally called or I met with in person. And I said, hey, I'm doing this subscription graphic design service. Would you be willing to be one of my first clients? And so that generated a lot of the sales right off the bat for the first maybe 18 months. And then after you leverage your existing network, you're either left with paying for ads. A lot of people do conferences. Some people do in-person meetups, and you kind of just, as an entrepreneur, you're scrambling what is going to work. And that's when I tested the cold email for Pixel Painters in 2019. And that is where on joshstarr.co, I have a case study that kind of goes through. I did it for 3 solid years. So 2019 all the way through COVID. And then some of the most recent campaigns, I think, ended this year. And that's where that lifetime value for Pixel Painters, the average customer is $24,000 per customer. And so if I'm booking those meetings and I'm landing those clients, that's where that $2.3 million of the lifetime value added to the business comes from.
That's awesome. And what is your so the 24K, what's your monthly package on that? Like I'm
Yeah.
curious what your churn rate is.
Yep. Yeah, the churn rate, sometimes, man, it's like you're looking at the churn, and you add 5 clients and you lose 5. It's like, man, like this month is terrible. My churn is pretty low over the past 4 years. Like it averages between 1 and 2%
Wow,
monthly. Yeah,
that's
so it's
amazing.
super, super low. I think it's a really sticky service because the clients really need the ongoing work, and um, I overqualify them. Like I try to just not sell the service. Like, hey, if we're not a good fit, if you're just going to use me for 1 month or one project, like I'm not a good fit. I'm not going to work with you. And so I disqualify a lot of the potential customers that come my way, which kind of stinks because at first you're not getting as many sales, obviously, but I think because of that, the churn rate's really low. And so the average lifetime value is really high, the churn rate's really low, which allows you to confidently kind of go out and grow your business, do marketing, do the cold email stuff because you know you're not going to have a huge wild swing month to month.
Yeah. Yeah, this is so cool. I always I mentioned to you that I always go really deep, and I'm noticing my thoughts branching into all these things I want to go down to. For
Mhm.
those of you who are here live, feel free to type questions in the Q&A as you go. But one question I have for you. Well, I'm gonna ask it in a second. Let me establish the other context first. So you've got Josh Starr. You do cold outreach for that. You've got Pixel Painters. You do cold outreach for that. Are there any other agency entities that you have that you do cold outreach to generate leads for? Or is it mostly just these two?
Yeah, those are the two that I own. I am spinning up another um, graphic design subscription service for healthcare companies.
Cool.
So I'm starting the cold email for that over the last 2 weeks. But then a few other clients that I do cold email outreach for that have started after my campaign for joshstar.co. So
Awesome. So okay, last little groundwork question for Pixel Painters right now. And I guess Josh Jar too, but Josh Jar kind of doesn't count because by the nature of your being here, you're generating leads for it outside of cold outreach because this is going to generate leads. But Pixel Painters, other than referrals, other than cold outreach, where are your leads coming from? Or are they? I know you're about to start with paid ads for that stuff. Are those your main two sources, just referrals and outreach?
yeah, so over the last 5 years, a lot of them were referrals. Most of them, lion's share, were cold email outreach. So I've basically built it from cold email outreach,
Cool.
and then just doing SEO optimization, some free giveaways, content online. Over the last year, I've seen maybe 10 to 15% of the clients come in just from Google, straight, organic search results, but I'm not doing any sort of paid social ads or paid AdWords or any sort of paid media at all. It's all cold email, referrals, and organic.
Cool. Very exciting. I think I speak for all of us when I say that the allure of cold outreach, even though it sounds scary and like I don't want to do it, I love that you can control it. And I'm curious how much you like for Josh Starr, let's say you get a new client, or for Pixel Painters at this point, I'm imagining it's maybe more in maintenance mode now. How much of the cold outreach process do you at this point for Pixel Painters personally have to do versus like having a team member do? Is it all out of your hands? What's that look like for you?
Yeah. For me, so I have 5 staff, and they're all designers. Like none of them do any of the sales or any of the admin assistants or any of that stuff. I'm basically wear all of the hats. So um, doing any sort of the sales, any sort of the technology stuff, the marketing, any of that, that's all on me. And that was like on busy weeks, that was some of the frustrating aspects is if cold email works really well, then these people are booking on your calendar and they're just kind of showing up on your
Yeah.
meetings. And so like sometimes some weeks where if you're an introvert, I typically keep my afternoons open for meetings. And so there are some weeks where I'm doing 4 or 5 meetings a day, 30 minutes a piece, and every day is full. And
Wow.
that was just like, for me, like at the end of the day, I'm just exhausted because I'm working 4 hours in the morning building things and then 4 hours or 3 hours in the afternoon doing all these meetings. So I was just like, man, I'm like wasted. I'm going home. I'm just like exhausted.
Yeah.
And so what I did, to alleviate some of that was I did a pre-recorded session where I did like this slideshow and I walked through all the questions, because after you've done 100 meetings, they typically always ask the same questions. And so I did a slideshow that has um, me walking through all the typical questions that I just recorded myself doing it. And so I put that right above my calendar link on the website. And so now that probably cut down on maybe half the meetings.
And they
And so
just
it's
like
kind of,
direct purchase.
yeah, yeah. So
Ah,
now at this
cool.
point, they'll go to the site, they'll watch that pre-recording, and then at the end of the pre-recording, I have a coupon for $100 off the first month.
Mm,
And so
so
normally,
clever.
like they'll watch all the way to the end, they'll sign up with that coupon, and they won't book a meeting at all. There are some times where the potential client will book a meeting because, in this industry, you like to know that you're working with someone like a real person. And so sometimes they're booking the meeting, they're wanting to know, am I a real person? But they're already like sold, like they're ready to sign on. Like, and so they're doing this meeting, and by the end, they're like, all right, what's the next step? And then
Hmm.
they get off the meeting and they sign up right away. And so the tire kicker meetings are less likely now, but the process for me is I do all of the meetings myself. I don't hand it off to anybody at this point.
And all of the initial research to find the leads, all of the initial emails to the leads, you're also doing that all yourself?
Yeah, yeah. In this industry, and that's probably one of the biggest action items that I could give you from the meeting is the more targeted your customer profile is, the more successful your cold email is going to be. And so if you're looking at selling agency services to just like the general market, your cold email is not going to work because you have to send just the sheer volume that you have to send is so high that it's just hard to churn through all those emails to get results. So the more targeted that you can get, the better results you're going to see. So for me, with the businesses that I've started, it's always what is the smallest number of the ideal customer profile that I'm going to go after. And with pixel painters, it's churches. And so as you do lead, um, purchase leads or you buy email list, normally it's pastor or communication director or working at a nonprofit. So it's like it's pretty segmented where you can find who these people are and based off their title and the businesses that they work for. And so in that respect, it was super easy to find and target who these people were, which made the cold email that much more accurate because I knew exactly who they were.
So I am wondering why, with the level of success and scale you've had, and the fact that you do this for clients, like, what's your main reason why you haven't hired a staff member to help with the actual conducting of the emails? Is it fear they won't do it right? Is it like challenges? Like, yeah, where's your head at with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, and this probably isn't the answer for everyone, but for me, I enjoy getting the results. Like as an entrepreneur, it's the from going from 0 to 1 that's fun. And so it's almost um, once you land the sale, I love passing that process off to someone else. Like I
Mm,
don't actually like doing what happens after you land the client,
mm,
but the journey from 0 to 1 and actually acquiring them, that's the fun part for me. So I
okay.
absolutely probably could train someone and hand it off, but it kind of feels like, man, I'd be handing off the part that I enjoy.
Yeah, fair enough.
And, at this stage in life, I will probably get to there over the next year or two, just, with kids and responsibilities and everything. But for now, I love it so much that I don't really want to hand it off to someone else. Like I want to get the joy of landing the clients, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. And if you enjoy it, awesome. For me, like I have been doing some cold outreach for my podcast guests, for example, and I have gotten so much value out of hiring somebody to do it for me, so that all I have to do is press send and like make some edits, because I fucking hate it. So for me to not have to actually engage with that, but still get the result, and like I create the initial template, but I don't have to do that repetitive work and that face all the rejection. For me, that's the nice fit. And it seems like that would kind of be the long-term ideal for it to be viable as a scalable marketing strategy, because if there's a process that somebody could follow and do well, then the only cap to the amount of leads that come in is, of course, the size of the market and the amount of team members I can hire to run the thing. So if you, oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a question I have for you is like, and you've probably learned this as well, as like if you hand things off too early and you
Yeah,
haven't really learned it yourself, then sometimes it's gonna fail. Like it's destined for failure because you didn't necessarily even learn how to do it yourself. So there's that
yeah,
sweet spot of like you went through the trenches, you learned everything, you know why it's working, and you can kind of systematize it and then hand it off. Then that works really well. But if you've never learned and never fought to actually know why it's working, then like handing it off sometimes it could be real frustrating because you're not getting the results and you're
totally.
like, hey, why aren't you doing this? And the person's like, well, I'm following the directions, like
Yeah,
all I could do is follow the directions.
yeah,
So it can kind of cause some problems there. But
yeah, for sure. I was recently speaking with a friend who's exited from a lot of businesses, and I was asking him if he thought I was wasting my time, like going through these technical processes the first time. So like in your graphic design equivalent, it would be like, deciding on the graphic design process the first time. And he was mirroring what you're saying. Like you got to do it the first time to know what to delegate. Otherwise people might not do the right things. So if you were to give a metric, like suppose somebody really doesn't like the process and they want to delegate it ASAP, what would your metric be of how many times they should close, or what sort of take rate they should get? Or maybe we should circle back to this after you explain your process. But I'd be keen to hear what your thought is on where that Goldilocks zone is of having gotten enough wins yourself, having gotten like a successful metric yourself before looking into delegating it. Do you think we should talk about that after you lay out the process, or do you want to speak to that now? What are your thoughts?
yeah, so in there is a percentage for actually booking meetings that I like to see, and that's typically 0.6% of the total emails. So if you're sending 1,000 emails to 1,000 people a month, I'd like to see at least 6 meetings being booked from that. Like that's pretty good results.
And not 6 closes, just 6 sales calls.
6 sales calls, yeah. So and that is if the list is targeted. That's if what you're selling, your service, is valuable. That's if everything lines up correctly. I'd like to see about 6 meetings booked per month based off that 1,000. And
Okay.
sometimes it's better than that. If it's a really great offer, a really great brand, super targeted list, like if everything lines up, sometimes it's 10 meetings a month. If you're struggling or kind of launching, it could be, 1, 2, 3 meetings per month, kind of starting out. So that's kind of average, but it's not, sometimes if you're selling a product or an e-commerce, you like to see a 3% conversion rate. Like I wish it was 3% doing cold email, but it's just not. It's 0.5, 0.6%.
So I'm guessing with that metric that you're aiming for, I'm guessing that your initial message is only minimally customized. Is that maybe this is a good time? Let's dive into the strategy, because I bet that's all going to become pretty clear. So we've established the context. I wanted to get a little bit of context with pixel painters because I think it's the best example of like a quote normal agency, right? You're not doing the thing for clients that you're also doing to clients. You're doing just a regular thing to regular clients, but you're getting those cold hours. So I kind of wanted to establish that picture for the listeners. Maybe I'm just jaded from my like internet marketing world where there are all these internet marketers teaching internet marketers internet marketing, but they've never done internet marketing. So I wanted, for anyone jaded like me, I wanted to establish that Josh has done cold outreach without just doing cold outreach to people to do cold outreach for. So everyone is on board with this now. So let's hear your step-by-step. So it sounds like you start with a purchased list versus leads you research yourself, or where's your starting point?
Yeah, there's a few different ways. You can purchase a list. So I've done bulk purchasing a list that's super large, 50, 60,000 people. I've also seen really good results, like for the joshstarr.co campaign that I'll walk you guys through. I didn't purchase a list at all. I actually went to, if you've been to the website Product Hunt, you might be familiar with it. So I've been on Product Hunt for years, and that's my exact market. And so what I did with that was I paid a Fiverr gig person to go into Product Hunt and manually scrape the emails, the company, and the names. And I think because I did it that way, that campaign performed really well because they weren't probably on like lead lists, like websites and APIs. You can't buy it. Like you had to physically go to the site and manually copy and paste all the emails and names. So the first step is, if you're generating that email list, where are they? So you can buy it, or you could do what I did and scrape it. But after that, each email was not customizable like to the individual person. It was lightly customizable with their URL, their company name, and their name. So it wasn't like I was going into, I think I had, let me look at my screen, 1,200 people. So I didn't go into each one of those 1,200 profiles and manually type that first line. It was an automated message with kind of some shortcodes in there that kind of pulled in the email message. So,
and quick pause to step back. So before starting, you mentioned earlier that you need to have a really clear ideal customer profile. You try to target something very small and stuff like that. So I guess before you even start with the scraping stuff, you have to do that. So what's your process for, like, if someone's listening, or me, like I gave you that example for that agency project I'm starting. So if with this agency, I'm working with podcasters, right? Would you define that as specific enough? Or would you be like, no, Zach, you need podcasters within a certain niche or something? Like, how do you decide what is targeted enough, what's not?
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's a great question. And I think everyone struggles with that because, our intuition is the bigger the market, the more we're going to be able to sell. But that's the exact opposite, that you have to really know your exact market. You have to have something of value to offer them, and the messaging has to speak directly to them. So if you're doing podcasts, podcast services, with that, the lifetime value has to be high enough to where it's going to work for you. And so if you're selling a service that's $100 a month, man, that's really hard because you have to buy the email list, you have to set up the software, your time, your close rate from the meetings. Like by the end of it, you might be not making enough money to make all that work for your time. And so for you, I would say, are there any podcasts that business related podcasts? Are there any entrepreneurs that have the budget that want to save time, that want to grow quickly? And where are they? Like, what does that ideal customer profile look like? And if it's a business, like what's that vertical that they're in? Maybe it's a financial advisor or something. Like they have money, they're doing a podcast, they're committed for a year or two. Like oftentimes what I do whenever I do the cold email is these businesses are already established. So I'm normally not necessarily like coaching them and advising them on their most ideal profile. But for me, as I've started business, I've always thought through, do they have money? Are they spending the money? Are they committed long term? And where are they at online? Like, are they in a place where I can identify who they are by either their title, their industry, the business size, if they're a for-profit, nonprofit, are there enough of those little triggers that I can build the email list based off of that? And then if I can build the email list, you also want to figure out, am I going to be able to get 1,000 new emails per month? Because you don't want it to be small enough to where it's so small that there's only 1,000 people in that cold email list, because then you're going to go through in 1 month and then you're going to have to start another strategy. So I like to see 10,000 to 20,000 people if you're building an email list, like with, I've used instantly.ai, I've used Lime Leads. There's a ton of the services online. So you can kind of look at the demographics, the businesses and things. And if I can build the email list that's 10,000 to 20,000 people, then I know, hey, this is targeted enough, and go after it at that point.
And you said, what were those 2 URLs?
Yeah, so I started out with reply.io is one. Instantly.ai is another one that's, I think, a little bit better. And they both have lead like services inside their application. So with Instantly, like you have to pay per month. It's like a software as a service, but you pay per month and you can look at all those, the demographics, the businesses, the titles, and you can search based off of that and then download or add those people into an email campaign right directly in the software. So that's typically what I've done, is use instantly.ai. But sometimes if you know who your target is, I've gone to businesses that just sell email lists, outright. And so I've gone to them directly and bought larger email lists for larger amounts of money. It's just, you have to know exactly who your target is, but you get a discount if you buy, a large amount as opposed to an instantly.
Okay. And a quick question from Steven, which I guess is in the next step, but might as well ask it. It's a quick one. When you do the outreach, are you doing it just via email, or do you do multi-channel? Like he asked, you do LinkedIn, email, other stuff, or is it just email?
It's just email. Yeah. So I've dabbled with adding cold calling in there, and LinkedIn. But if your email campaign is set up correctly, then I've got the best results just sticking to email. So not even adding in LinkedIn, not adding cold calling at all, just straight email.
Okay. So to give us an example, could you share with us your ideal customer profile for both Josh Starr and Pixel Painters, so we can compare that? Sounds like Pixel Painters, you could probably do it with the more automated way where it's like churches that are over this size or whatever. Whereas Josh Starr, it sounds kind of more qualitative. So I'd be interested to hear how you define both.
Yep. Yeah, the Josh Starr is technology companies. So it's either software as a service or consulting, IT consulting, or agency services as, building software for other companies. And so I know that myself because I have a company that does exactly that as well. So for me, like I knew if you're a development studio, if you're an IT services company, the average lifetime value of a customer is pretty high. So I knew just right off the bat exactly who they are, where they are, and that's why I went to Product Hunt. Obviously, some of those are early stage startups. Some of them are more established, but they're on Product Hunt because they're trying to grow. And so I knew that, hey, they're going to be looking for growth strategies, and cold email is a great growth strategy. With Pixel Painters, that's a little different because I had been offering that service as one-off services for like 10 years. And so whenever I started Pixel Painters, it honestly, I bought DYF courses at the very beginning, like years ago. And whenever I started Pixel Painters, it was from, I think, a podcast of an agency. What was the name of the agency? Design Pickle, I think was the name of it. And so my brother was using Design Pickle, and he was super upset with like the low quality stuff that he was getting. And I thought, man, I could do this better. It's like, I know this other vertical, I could do this better. And it's the classic entrepreneur is like, you see
Yeah.
a problem and you're like, I'm going to solve it. And so that's why I kind of started with pixel painters. Had worked with those churches, the nonprofits, for a number of years. And so I knew exactly where they were in the world. I knew where they were online. I knew their titles, that they're working at a nonprofit. So it was super easy for me to build those lists because I knew exactly who they were. But if you don't know who your target is, if you're starting from scratch, sometimes that could be hard. You're testing for a long time, trying to figure out where are they, is a message um, resonating, and that's why it's much easier to do cold email if you're already selling something and something's working,
Mm.
because who they are, their titles, what you're selling, and so at that point, it's just building out the email list in the software. Like, can we find, are they out there, and how big is this list at that point?
So do you think, on that note, if somebody is still working on productizing, like, so let's say that you were a graphic designer and you knew you were a good graphic designer and you had just heard about Design Pickle Sucking, you were like, yeah, it would be cool to start this productized unlimited design service, but I don't have a network. So really my only way to get leads would either be, I don't know, Upwork or cold email. For someone in that position, do you think, because you say that it's best if you're already established and you know it's working, like, do you think that cold email still makes sense and it's just going to be harder? Or do you think there's a different route you think people should take? Or do you have no hard opinion?
Yeah, I think with cold email, as long as you learn the system and you do it yourself at that stage, then it's very cost effective. It's even more cost effective than trying to do ads because you can test some different verticals. You could test some customer profiles that are going to use your graphic design services. So you can treat it as like a testing ground for, is this ideal customer profile going to buy what I'm selling? Because the software is so affordable. I think Instantly is $100 a month and plus email. So it might be $130 a month to test some of these ideal customer profiles out. So if you're starting from scratch and you don't really have ideal customer profile, or you don't have enough past clients to really know who to target, then you should probably still do the exercise of, are these people in need of my services? Are they online? Do they have money to buy it? And after that, then yes, you could absolutely test it yourself. Using someone like me where it's like done for you is probably not smart because it's expensive. You're paying someone else to do it
Right.
and you don't learn all the process. But as long as you're building your ideal customer profile and then learning yourself, you could absolutely do it. You could use it and it would be effective for sure. You just have to be honest about um, a really well done cold email campaign is going to be 0.6% meetings booked. And if you're starting from scratch and you're building that profile, it might be 0.1%. So out of 1,000 emails, you might have one meeting booked if you're starting out. So just be open and honest about the actual results you're going to get.
And it sounds like you have not experimented with highly personalized emails. Is that right?
Yeah, so for me, if I'm going to do the highly personalized, it's like just from my Google Workspace account. Like I'm going to do it one at a time directly to the person. Doing it in bulk is so hard and time consuming. I did find a middle ground with a new service that actually used with joshstarr.co, the campaign that worked really well. And it's I'll have to add it in the chat, the URL. Oh, actually, it's response.ai is the service. And basically what it does is, because I don't know, Zach, if you've gotten like automated like cold emails. Like I get a ton.
Yeah.
Like I
Same.
probably get 5 or 10 a day at this
Mm-hmm.
point. But it's always the same thing. It's like, hey, first name, a quick question. It's like literally the subject is like, then I don't know what happened with that. Like everyone read the same book or watched the same like YouTube video, and it's like, hey Josh or hey Zach, quick question. It's like I probably get 10 emails a day from that in my agency. But as soon as you read that email subject, you just archive it because you're so used to getting it. You know it's a cold email. And so I was thinking, how can I still send cold email campaigns and not customize each email individually, but get good results? And so I found response.ai. And what it does is um, it it automatically makes videos for you based off of that email and that domain that you're setting up. And so what I did was with the um, with the product hunt emails, I had their email, I had their domain, I had my case study domain, and then I had my joshstarr.co domain. And so what I did was I recorded a 60-second video one time where I talked through how I found them, and then I skipped to my case study URL, and then I skipped to joshstarr.co. And what response.ai does is it generates 1,000 videos where I just record it once, and it generates 1,000 videos with the customer's actual website in the video. And so whenever you send that cold email, in the body of the email, it has an animated GIF of their website. Like it looks like, hey, this guy actually recorded
I've
a
seen one of
video
those.
with,
Yeah.
yeah, yep. And so what that did was like, in if you're pretty smart, like you can watch a video and you could tell, hey, like he didn't record this video exactly for me, but it's like, it's just good enough to where you could start the conversation. And so that's a really good way to where you don't have to customize each individual email. You basically allow response.ai to generate those 1,000 videos, and you drop it in the cold email campaign. So when they watch it, they see, hey, this is my website. They're screen recording my website, and it has your face on there, and it's like audio. Like it's worked really, really well for a lot of campaigns. And so for me, um, it's always trying to find software and solutions that you could scale for me, because cold email outreach, unfortunately, is a numbers game. Like you have to send 1,000 or people, 1,000 people a month. And so you just have to find something that you can scale. If you're doing individualized emails for 1,000 people, it just takes forever to do that.
But in those cases, I mean, like I've seen some arguments pretty strongly on the personalized front where they'll get really high conversions, like maybe 20% response rates because it's like incredibly personalized. So I think that's probably the caveat here, is that it's not like you would still see a 0.6% conversion rate on something that's crazy personalized. Like, for example, Brian Harris was talking about how he would subscribe to people's email lists and hit reply to one of their email newsletters and like compliment some specific blog post. So it's like it kind of overcomes all those cold outreach triggers. And there's no way that would be 0.6%. But of course, it would take longer. One question for these kind of this bulk email approach. It sounds like you set up a top level domain that is your bulk sending domain so that your main email doesn't get like spam scored, or what's that look like?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one thing that you have to really make sure that you do right on the technical side. Otherwise, if you get marked as spam, not only does it kill the cold email, but it kills your business as well. And so right off the bat, whenever I set up a new client, what I do is I go out and I'll buy 10 domains, new domains. Or if the client already has a backlog of unused domains, you need normally between 6 and 10 domains that you either buy or you already have that just forward on. If they're going to a browser, like it forwards on to your main domain. So once you buy those domains, then you set up two email addresses per domain. And so best case scenario, you have 10 new domains and you have 20 emails that you're sending from those domains to your cold email list. And the reason why you do that is if you're sending to 1,000 people a month, you don't want to send 1,000 emails in a day from one email address because you'll get marked as spam. And so you want to send maybe 20, 30, 40 emails from each individual email address a day. And then that allows you to kind of go through a sequence, and you want to send multiple emails in that sequence. And so the average month, you might send 3,000 emails over 20 days through those 20 emails. And if you do it right and you set up all the technical side of all the setup, then normally the user won't mark it as spam. And normally Google and everyone that's kind of doing that isn't going to see you as spam and put you in the spam folder. So you get in the inbox, they get to see it, but it's coming from 20 emails. And so Instantly does a really good job of having, they call it like the unified inbox, to where if you're sending out to those 20 emails, it's all coming back to this inbox. And so you just kind of go to one spot and you can see all the replies and all that stuff and reply directly to the emails in there.
And do the domains for those emails matter? Like, are they just throwaway? Should they somehow tie back to your actual, like, would you try to pick like pixelpainters.ai, or would it just be some BS domain?
Yeah. You want it to be consistent with the main brand. So you could buy a .co, .com, .us, .net. You could use, the in front of it, or your first name or whatever. Like, you can have variations, but you want it to make sense with the actual business name as
Okay.
well. So as long as you can find 10 domains, you're pretty good. And some of them are more expensive. Like, I normally don't buy a .ai just because kind of so expensive, but .co, .com, .us, .net are the top ones that I typically buy for sure.
Okay. So what I'm wondering, okay, so here's the math. So before I dive into this math experiment that I want to go through with you, I just want to clarify. So have you done a deep experiment ever with doing highly personalized cold email, or has, other than messaging people in your network, has it always been this kind of like really bulk strategy?
Yep. Yeah, it's always been really bulk. And then if I'm doing the highly customized stuff, it's like what you talked about, where I'm doing the lead research on my own, generating my own list, and then I'm either messaging them direct through LinkedIn, calling them, or emailing them direct. And so I just kind of always got the best results of, if you're going to do the customization, like, why not just go full on and find them, talk to them, call them, send them a video directly, and like they know, hey, like he actually did this. So I haven't, besides the response.ai, I have not done like try to get the best of both worlds at all. I've just seen the best results with, yeah.
But what I mean, like what the line I'm trying to draw is, I want to, because for me, like this really bulk approach you take, it kind of reminds me of when I was like first starting back in the day in my agency. I had a call center with actual like cold callers, and I had sales reps, and I did something kind of like your strategy, like with Craigslist back in the day. I had this like tool where I could put a Craigslist post in like a million fucking cities, and people would get in touch. So then we call them and all these things. And like, I don't know, these days, I don't like how it feels doing that super cold bulk outreach, but I'm wanting to kind of compare what the time cost is for this like highly customized route versus this bulk route that you take. And so I'm wondering how, yeah, Stephen, I'll ask that in a second. I'm wondering what goes into your approach in terms of time and dollars versus the other. And I'm wondering if you have done both. Like, so that's what I'm trying to tease out right now is how much have you actually tried to do the highly customized approach? Has it just been you've tried it a few times, or have you you've tried it thoroughly and decided, like, what's your experience with the highly customized one just from your Google Workspace account?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So that one, with a few different businesses, I've done it for years, honestly. It depends on the strategy that you're going after. Like, I've seen the best results on the agency side with having a mutual introduction. Like if I can find someone um, that I know is going to use my agency services and I'm a friend of a friend, either on LinkedIn or something, then oftentimes I'll text the person that I know, like on my phone and say, hey, I'm growing my business, or, a project is ending and I know XYZ. Could you do an introduction? Here's kind of what I'm offering. And that normally works very, very well because
Yeah.
they're building the authority from the other person.
But what about like the cold version? Like, because that's, of
Yeah,
course, that would work well, but it's not scalable. I'm saying
yeah,
like you find a church, you go to churchwebsite.com, you go
mhm,
to their blog where they showed their sermon last week. You pull up the
mhm,
post and you're like, hey, I loved your guys' sermon last week when Pastor John was talking about how Jesus was really nice. It really got me right
mhm,
here.
mhm.
I would love to blah, 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 blah. Like that's what I mean. Cause that's still
Yep,
cold, but it's
yep,
so specific that they know it's not
yep,
automated. Have you
yep.
ever invested into something like that or not really so
Mhm.
much?
Yeah, yeah, yes, I have. But I haven't seen results. And this
Okay.
is obviously just anecdotal because I don't do that a ton for a lot of my businesses or my clients that I work with. Like I've done it a lot for the businesses that I've run, started, and operated. And I think the main problem that I've come across, and I'm open obviously to conversation and feedback, but it's always like when you're doing that, I spend a lot of time researching who they are, their email, finding all this information out. And if they're not in the market to buy my service, then it's like, man, like
You just lit the
they
time on
might not
fire.
ever, yeah, like they might not ever respond back, or they already have someone. And so there's not like that signal that they're looking for my service or offering at all. And so I've always just thought, man, and I did it at first of growing my business. Like that's how I tried to grow, is like going out, finding them, emailing them directly, like the highly customized route. And I just got zero results
Mm,
because I would never know if they were actually looking for my service. So it's kind of comes across as, hey, are you looking for this? And so you're sending maybe 10 of those a day. So it like takes so much time to do that, and you're sending it, and then like if they're not looking for your service or um, whatever reason, then it's just gone. Like they're
yeah.
not going to buy it at all. And so after a while, just like, man, I got to shift gears. And the cold email is, there's the signal that comes back if they're replying. And so the rate might be 5 or 6%. And so if you imagine if you're doing the highly customized direct outreach, 5 or 6%, of those people might actually be looking. So
Yeah.
you have to send so many of those, and the time it takes to do that is so high that I just could never make the time worth it for me.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's the kind of answer I was hoping to get is just wondering if you have personally had experience both and you made this decision after both, or if it was like, you know, this works for you, but maybe, for other people they prefer the other. But so it sounds like for you the main thing was just the huge time investment. So let's talk about I did the numbers. So at a zero point 0.6, unless my math is wrong, at 0.6, it looks like you need to send 166 emails to get a client. Is that right? Did I do that math
Yep.
right?
Hmm.
So let's talk about like the time cost. And I think that this will answer Steven's question about table stakes. By the way, can you share that case study URL? If
Yeah, if you go to joshstarr.co, there's a link at the top of the page that has that case study in there that has some screenshots and some background there.
is that under the case studies link?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, cool.
That's it.
Oh, and so I see it. So I go and it is the case study of pixel painters,
Yep.
right?
That's right.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so let's talk about the table stakes then while Steven goes and looks at that. um, so if I want to send 166 emails, obviously with your approach, you would never do that because you have a lot of onboarding and offboarding time, like getting the list in the first place, making the ICP in the first place. But suppose you had all that established, uh, or maybe not. Don't suppose that. So that's the first question is like, obviously you have to pay for the domains. And then for these email addresses, are you just like throwing them into some like HostGator account and you're like making the email addresses in there? Or like where are you hosting the email for these and what's the cost associated with that?
I've always used Google Workspace.
Oh,
There's other services that you could use and connect with, but both Instantly and Reply.io tie really easy into Google Workspace.
and so
So
these 20 email addresses, they would all be aliases in Google Workspace?
no, yeah, you got to pay at a couple years ago. I think it was like $5 a
Yeah, but
month
now it's
per
fucking
email.
crazy. It's like $12 each. So that'd be $240 outlay for 20 per month.
I think, don't they do like a even more basic account that you kind of have to dig in
Oh, okay.
and find? Like I think they did raise it to like $6 or $7 or $8 per email. Uh, I'd have to look to see, but yeah, you have to pay. So if you're super budget conscious, there's other email services that you can run that might be $1 or $2 a month, but they're not aliases. They're individual emails with their own sending account and all that
Okay.
stuff. So I normally set it up with Google Workspace because both Instantly and Reply.io, they have to authenticate the sender. And so it's not like reply.io or instantly is sending the emails. Like they're going through your Google Workspace and they're sending
Right.
it. Otherwise, like it comes across as like HTML email or like email blast. So you want it to come actually from your sender.
But
So
why
Google
not,
Work.
like with HostGator or something, you could set up email addresses in there and hook it in with like POP3 or whatever. Would that?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, I've seen a lot of guys in agencies do that. Like
Okay.
they'll run sometimes, like if you're technical, I saw an article a couple weeks ago. He set up an Amazon SCS service to where he was doing his own. And for me, it's all about the speed.
Okay.
Like I don't mind paying the $6 a month, the cost. But if you are pretty budget conscious, then yes, like you don't necessarily have to use Google Workspace at all. You could do it for super cheap.
Okay. So we'll go into cost in a second, but what I really want to know actually, before we go into the nuts and bolts, is the time cost. So these 166 emails, supposing you already had your template written and made and customized, like to pipeline these 166 leads, find the 5% that have that signal, get them through the next stage or whatever. Like, what do you reckon your time cost is to do that enough times to get like a few people on the call? Yeah, that's it. So that's the question, is like, what's the time cost to get 166 leads through a funnel?
Yep. Um, for me, it's a little bit different because I've done it for a while. And so I know exactly what messaging works. I know how to build it out so I could do it quickly. And I think that's why whenever you're paying someone like done for you, like they're saving all that time for you. So for me, whenever I do this for a client, on day one, I'm buying those domains, I'm setting up the emails, I'm warming them up. And so I normally say in the first 60 days, I'm going to book 5 meetings for them based off of that. And so normally it takes 3 to 4 weeks to warm up those emails. So the first month is building all the messaging, setting up the technology, warming up the emails. And then month two is sending the campaigns. And then by the end of month two, the client normally has about 5 meetings booked over that month. But if you're doing it yourself, at first, man, it took me months to figure out what's working, the messaging, because it's not like Facebook ads where you can send 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 people as a test and do A/B testing and like see what people are clicking through. Like the volume is so low that you have to really test the messaging to see what is getting responses. And so at first, like it took maybe 6 months, 6 or 9 months to really dial in the messaging on how am I communicating and figuring out to make sure that the emails aren't marked as spam and, sending too many emails and that whole thing. Like it took several months for myself if you're starting from scratch to figure that out. So
Okay.
it depends. If you're doing it yourself, I would expect stick with it for at least 3 to 6 months while you learn, figure it out, and see what's working. And then once you figure out what's working, then you revise and improve on that.
And so you said that it takes a couple months to get those first 5. What does month 3 usually look like? I'm just curious.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so month three, if you have a big enough market, then the messaging is working, the meetings are being booked, then you can start to dial up those 1,000 leads per month. So if you have a big enough market and you're getting 5 meetings or 6 meetings booked from those 1,000 leads, then we might dump another 1,000 in there and go from 6 to 12 meetings a month. So it really depends on how many leads that we're putting in there from the actual lead generator or like the actual lead finder system.
And in that case, the scaling is just a matter of buying some more email addresses, pretty much.
Yep.
So
Yep.
once you have everything dialed in and working and hitting the KPIs, assuming that your leads list is big enough, I imagine the time cost to pipeline, like let's say month 3, supposing that you already had everything dialed in, you already had the leads list, you have a 20,000 lead list, and you're just going to grab another 1,000 from them. What's the time cost to actually take those 1,000 leads through to create 6 calls?
Yeah. Yep. The cool part about the system is it's running on its own. And so after you build everything out and you're dumping the leads in there, the time really is it's running on autopilot. So it's sending out the emails. Normally, I like to spend 20, 30 minutes a day to get into the system and respond to emails. If someone's replying back to an email, they don't want to wait all day. And so normally I'll check a couple times a day the unified inbox and see who's responded, and I'll reply back or whatever in there. And so at that point, it's replying to the emails daily, in the morning a couple times, in the afternoon a couple times. And then sometimes they'll book the meetings directly. So if you have a sales team that's doing the sales calls, then that time is kind of outside the system, obviously, but you have to make time to do the sales. But running the system, it's just replying to the emails, making sure you're responsive, and that could be 30 minutes a day, really.
Okay, cool. Then yeah, I guess let's now dive. I feel like I've been spending about an hour, literally an hour, establishing these fundamentals. But let's look at this process. So we determined a bit about your ideal customer profile and how you get started. And it sounds like your list, you shared some tools for that, and you could scrape them manually. So so now you have a list. You know who you want to market to. I guess the other question is, like you said, that it could be hard with a lower ticket service. Both of your services are recurring revenue. Do you believe that it's mostly only viable with recurring revenue, or if it's a one-off, it could be fine as long as it has a certain margin? Like, how do you establish if your service could even be financially viable for this? What's your benchmark?
Yeah. Yeah, I like to see average and lifetime value of more than $2,000. That makes sense for me because I'm selling the cold email services myself. So if you're paying me maybe $2,000 a month to do this service for you, then every meeting that I book for you, you're not going to close. And so for me, the finances are, you might close half of them or a quarter or 3/4, whatever it is. So you have to factor in the cost that you're paying me, the cost that you're getting, and your close rate. So normally, just back of napkin, I like to make sure that lifetime value is at least 2,000. Subscription services are really good because the lifetime value is so high, and it could be a year, 2 or 3, of lifetime value of monthly getting paid. That's why software consulting, software development works really well, because typically it's large dollars. It's 10,000, it's 20,000, 30,000 per project, and then all the upsells. So normally software is really, really good. Branding packages work really good. Like any sort of service works good because normally it's more than $2,000 for that lifetime. If you're selling an individual product, man, that product just has to be killer for it to be $2,000,
Yeah, but just to clarify, it's not quite $2,000 lifetime value. It sounds like it should more specifically be at least $2,000 lifetime gross profit. So like if you're running your design subscription, and let's suppose your costs are literally 50% and it's $1,000 a month, you would want to see a lifetime value of 4,000, which would be a $2,000 lifetime gross profit just to break even. Is that that right?
Yeah. So in our realm, kind of doing being the person that's completing the services, normally the margins are high enough to where even if it's like gross 2,000 and the profit is 75% or 80 or 90, like normally that works really well. If your profit is 50%, and you're paying someone else to actually complete the service or something, then yeah, like it should be 3,000, 4,000 gross and net should be 2,000 for sure.
Cool.
But, once you get the customer, um, even if you're getting a customer for $1,000 profit, lifetime value profit, there's still the opportunity for upsells, side sells. Like it's much easier to sell an existing customer than getting someone from scratch.
Yeah.
So even like if it's around that mark, I would still say you're probably going to benefit because there's an opportunity to build your catalog and sell them something else in the future. So you can increase that LTV at that point.
So for 1,000 emails that you are sending to, what are the fixed costs? Like if you were DIYing to buy those 1,000 leads, to set up the 20 email addresses, any other costs that go along with it, cost for like the tool, what's the dollars out of pocket cost, assuming everything was dialed in?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So if I would start with instantly.ai because they build, it's like a one-stop shop. And so it's the software that does the cold email. It has the lead list in there so you can find the leads and put them in your campaigns. And it also does what is critical, which is called the email warm-up system. And so instantly, I think with the lead add-on is $150 a month. And so at the bare minimum, you'd pay that plus buying your domains and setting up the monthly email. So if you're using Google Workspace, that might be $120 a month for the emails, plus $100 a year, $150 a year for all the domains.
Okay.
So you're looking at 250 to 275 a month, all in to use the system.
Cool.
Yep.
So what does your campaign structure usually look like? So you mentioned that there's that warm up bit. Is that different than like an initial, like, I guess I'm curious what your CTA is in your first email. Is it just trying to get a response to see if they're vaguely interested, or yeah, how do you structure your campaigns?
Yeah, so there's two things before I answer the campaign question. The warm up is whenever you buy those domains and you're sending up the emails, you can't just start sending emails directly from there because you'll get marked as spam. And so the warm up is an automated thing that instantly and a lot of these cold email services do, to where it automates the sending to other emails in a way to where it looks like it's an actual new email account that's kind of warming up. And so you don't get marked
Oh,
as spam.
so other
And so
emails like within their service?
yeah, yep,
That's
yeah. So
funny.
like,
Cheeky.
yeah, so if you signed up and I signed up, my warm up email would be emailing you and you would be emailing
Oh,
me
that's so
back, and it would
funny.
be like it looked like it was coming from you and from me and stuff. So they do
Ugh.
it. Yeah. So it's kind of weird. And you could set up rules in your email to like automatically archive those. So like your inbox isn't just, crushed with that.
Mhm.
But you absolutely have to do that, because if you just come out of the gate and you start sending 100 emails a day with this new email address, like it's all going to get marked as spam. And so
Mm.
you're dead in the water. So there's kind of two things. It's that, but the campaigns, once the campaigns are running on like week 4 or 5, that first email to the cold email list, it really depends on how targeted your email list was, to be honest. Like on my campaign that I did with Product Hunt, the first email, it was a 63% open rate and a 14% click rate. So it's like huge, because that video that I talked about and in the subject line was talking about Product Hunt. I had a profile in Product Hunt. Um, they weren't used to getting cold emails, I don't think, because like I manually found them, like I script them myself. So they weren't in that the lead list where you buy them. And so that's pretty high. 63% open rate's pretty high, and was great. Sometimes it could be 40% open rate on that first email. And then the follow-ups, you want to see over the course of like a 3-part email campaign, you want to see, did they open up one of those emails? Like you want to at least hit them with one open rate on all that. And so for this campaign overall is 81% open rate from that campaign, which is awesome. It's a crazy, crazy high.
So supposing I have a pretty customized or specific audience, what do you recommend I have my first like subject line be, the text to my first email be, that kind of thing?
Yep. Yeah, like I never do the classic one that you see all the time where it's like, hey, first name, quick question. That's
Mhm.
the first one. Like you'll see that everywhere now. Like use that as your subject line. I don't use that because everyone uses it. And if you're getting a cold email, you recognize right away that it's a cold email. And so I've seen really good results by doing, hey, first name, hope you're well, hope you're doing well. Or sometimes you can customize the day of the week. So you could say, hey, first name, hope you're having a great Thursday, and kind of customize that email subject based off of what day a week it is. And you can have day of the week triggers in your email system. So I've seen really good results with adding the day of the week in the subject title or just saying, hey, Zach, hope you're doing well, and they're like, oh, all right. Like this kind of seems like it's coming from a friend or an acquaintance or something. It gets past the super salesy of quick question, like your friend or someone I just feel like the quick question is so overused. I get it so often, like immediately it triggers, hey, this is cold. So I'm not even going to open it.
And what do you usually have as the body of your first email? Like what kind of CTA, what are you trying to get them to do? And how
Yeah.
do you structure it?
Yep. Yeah. I got really good results with, and I have for the past year on doing an animated GIF of a video that they have to click through. So have you ever used Loom? Do you use Loom to record?
Mhm.
They have the animated GIF that you can embed in an email. So I've seen a lot of great results with dropping that in the email. Um, and I think this is probably because cold email is being more widely used, that it takes something more than just text to break through now. 3, 4 years ago, you could probably just send, and I did, where it was just straight up text content in the email and you would get opened and people would read it. But now, if you don't see like a picture of the person that's sending it to you, like you assume, I don't know this person, like I'm just going to delete it.
Mm.
And so, what I normally have is um, a, well, the body of the copy has a few things. It has who you are, it has the value that you're going to offer them, and it also has a some sort of, hey, would you be interested in getting these results for your business? So it's not coming out of the gate saying, hey, do you want to book a meeting? It's, here's the results that I've generated, whether financially, emotionally, making them look better, whatever it is. Here's the results that I've done for a client that are like you. And would you be interested in hearing more about how I could do the same thing for you?
So for pixel painters, you might do something like, hey, love your church. I have this graphic design subscription thing that I did for a similar church that they're so stoked that now they don't have to handle that in-house. Is this something you think you'd want to chat about? Or how would you structure one for that?
Yep. Yeah, for pixel painters, the pain point is a lot of the churches that I work with, they have a communication director on staff or an executive pastor or a worship pastor on staff, and they just don't have the time to do the graphic design. Or they're working with a volunteer and the volunteer is unpaid doing these graphics, and so they're just taking forever to do the graphics, and the church feels bad critiquing the volunteer for the graphics that they submit. So for the cold emails, it's, um, hey, are you struggling to get all your to create, your sermon graphics or your weekend graphics done in time? Do you need, honestly, like the best results I've gotten are just offering, hey, do you need help? Because most of the time they know they're underwater, they need help. There's just not enough time in the day to do everything. And so like offering them my help to help solve that problem. They already know they have the problem. They just don't know in this world, they don't know that there's a service out there that does this. In selling like a service, like cold email service, it's worked really well with showing the results that I've generated for other clients, because every business, they want more sales. So if you could say, hey, I generated $2.5 million for this business, and I know I could do the same thing for you, then normally it's like, well, at least I'll read this email or I'll watch this video. And then everything else has to sell that, like you have to deliver the results. Your website, the messaging has to match up with that. You have to be able to convince and prove that you're doing that. But that first message is, here's the results that I generated. I know I could do it for you. Would you be interested in hearing more? So it's just like opening the conversation.
And so you frame the video as saying, like, I made you a video showing how I could get these results for you. And then after that, it's like, would you be interested in hearing more? And so they go watch the video, and it has you talking about like who you've helped. And then there's some point where the AI thingy injects their website, and then it goes back to you. But it's you basically talking about the results you've provided to other clients and the problem. And the CTA is like, do you want to talk about how I can do this for you? Is that pretty much right?
Kind of, yep. Except in that first email, the video is already there. Like the AI generated video is already there with their website. And so it's, hey, it's me talking about, found you on this website, or I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and it's recording their screen, their website. And then it goes immediately into the case study of my website, and then the case study of my final website of like,
Okay.
here's a client that I helped. Here's my website, and I'd love to talk more about how I can generate these same results for you.
And so
that's, yeah.
then you just
So
try
they
to get
watch
them on
that
like a
video.
free discovery call.
Yep. And that discovery call is, um, it's more, selling your services, proving that you know what you're doing. So it's not like they're ready to sign on right away. It's, hey, am I a good fit for cold email? Oftentimes it's like, is this going to work for me? Or, what I'm selling isn't $2,000 lifetime value. Like, could this still work? Or what do you think about, I've tried cold email in the past and it hasn't worked, or I've done ads and ads aren't performing, or whatever it is. Like, it's just basically a discovery of business growth most of the time, because any sort of business, they've typically done ads if they're established, and probably got a terrible ROI on the ads. And so if you could explain to them, this is a positive ROI, if we could book meetings, then it's normally just convincing and selling at that point.
And just to circle back to the first email, is the ask, click here and book something on my Calendly? Is it hit reply and tell me if you're interested? What are you specifically asking for?
Yeah. Most of the time it's either let me know if you're interested in solving this problem. I normally don't say hit reply. I normally just say, would you be interested in hearing more?
Okay.
Or let me know if you want me to send you some ideas of how this could work. Or are you open to a Zoom call sometimes? Like, are you open to getting together tomorrow? So I normally don't say reply back. I try to stay away from that verbiage there. It's, would you be open to a meeting tomorrow? Or sometimes I've done really good results with adding, if you're automatically sending it on a Monday, adding like a day, like a Tuesday. So actually using the word Tuesday on there, or Wednesday or whatever, and saying, hey, are you open the afternoon of Tuesday or tomorrow or something, if you want to keep it general. And like actually suggesting a call to action. Let's do a Zoom call. I'd love to share with you how I can help you. are you open on Tuesday or tomorrow? And that works.
And then what do your follow-ups look like? Are you just saying like, hey, just checking in. Did you want to chat about this? Or how do you structure those? And how many do you send?
I do a 3-part email or a 3-part sequence. And the first one we already talked about. The second one is normally 7 to 10 days after the first one. And that only gets sent if they didn't reply to the first one. So if they reply to the first one, then it opts them out. It doesn't send the second or the third. But if they don't reply to the first one, the second one goes out 7 to 10 days after. And I found that window is good because, if they're busy or they're on vacation or whatever, normally if you reply back, in 10 days, normally you can kind of follow up and they'll read and open that second one. And so the second one is normally the message is very similar to the first one, and it comes in as a threaded reply to that first email. So it's not like a totally new email off the bat, like a new thread or anything. It's an actual thread, which keeps the subject, and then it's kind of a rehash of that first email. Like here's the video. Hope you're doing well. Here's some of the results that I got for a client that's similar to you. I hope you're doing well. I know you're busy. I'd love to schedule time to get these same results for you. Are you open tomorrow? And so it's very, very similar to the first one.
Okay.
And then the third one is a little different because it's almost like they've gotten 2 emails over the course of 2 weeks, and this one's like a fail-safe, like a last-ditch effort to see if maybe they're interested, maybe they're super busy, and I'm going to do one final thing and say, hey, there's my different language, but a lot of times I'll say, this is my final follow-up. I just wanted to see, I know you're busy. I wanted to see if you wanted to connect about my service offering, and maybe here's a case study. I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, I'm not going to email you again or something. Or, hey, I wanted to email you one last time. I was curious if you were open to talk tomorrow. And just keep like the content just literally super small like that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, with cold email though, there are some laws that you have to take into account. So in every email, you have to make sure that there's a way to opt out. And so reply.io and Instantly, they both do this really well, but you have to have 2 things in every email. You have to have a way for them to opt out and an actual physical address of where you're sending it from. And so normally at the end of every email, I'll have, if you're not interested or you don't want to hear from me anymore, let me know or reply back or something. And then Instantly reply.io, whatever service that you're using, automatically unsubscribes them and they won't get any more emails if they reply back. And then you have to make sure you have the mailing address in there too. So that's kind of the end of every email with normally I have like a GIF of like a headshot of myself to let them know, hey, this is a real person emailing you. It goes a long way as well.
And suppose you sent me an email that was like, hey, Zach, I'd love to get you these results that I got for similar people. Is this something you want to hear more about? And I say, yeah. From there, so suppose the call to action wasn't like a call. It was just, is this something you want to hear more about? Do you then send like a customized Loom video, or what's your response usually look like if they just indicate interest?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it depends on your process. So for me personally, it's so customized for every single time. So it depends on what they're asking for. Like if they're asking about, hey, my lifetime value isn't 2,000, it's 1,000. Do you think this could work? Then I'll ask some other qualifying questions of like, what are you selling? Is it a product? Is it a service? Is your market small enough? And so it's almost like answering questions for them to qualify them. Is this going to work for them?
But what if all they said was like, yes, I'm interested in hearing more?
Yeah. So if they say just straight up, yes, I'm interested, then normally I'll respond with, hey, excited to connect. Here's my Calendly link.
Okay.
I would love to kind of do a Zoom meeting. And so I try to say, hey, book it. I'm open today. And here's the link. Let's find a time to connect. And so that's like the actual sales process.
Okay.
And that's what's kind of different about this is um, this is the one component that you can get the leads, but you still have to close them.
Yeah.
You still have to have that defined process. And so you want to get them with your sales team. You want to get these people booked with you if you're doing the sales. So that's the actual converting piece of let's get a
Right.
meeting scheduled and sell them on the service that we're offering.
Cool.
Yep.
So for those of you here live, I'm looking at the clock. We got to start winding it into the end. So if anyone who's live has questions, type them into the chat. But I'm gonna ask Josh right now my own question while we're waiting for some to come in. So I'm looking at the KPIs I had down of like the stuff I wanted to understand. I wanted to understand your start to finish funnel. Got that. Wanted to understand some of your metrics to aim for. I think I have a pretty all right idea of that. We got some ideas of tools. So I'll just ask you like the classic podcaster ending question, which is like, is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't? Anything about your process? If someone's thinking of implementing this on their own that we should have talked about and didn't?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So it might not be the topic here, but I think it's always good as an entrepreneur to talk through the actual service that you're offering because cold email only works is if your service is something that people want to buy, you know. So have you clearly defined, and that's why all the DYF stuff that I've bought in the past and consumed, I think that's what's helped me really define what my offering is. Like being clear about what you're selling helps the messaging of the cold email. It helps be authentic. The messaging in the cold email on your website when they're booking a meeting, how you're communicating, all that stuff. The cold email only works if you have a solid message and you're selling it and you're being authentic. And so I would start there even before you're doing the cold email stuff. Cold email works. So I think maybe secondly, um, cold email is beginning to be more crowded than it used to be. And so it's almost like the wild, wild west of SEO, 10, 15 years ago. Like you could do a couple articles and you'd be the first page. And now the competition is so fierce, you have to know what you're doing to get in that first page results, organic results. And it's the same thing with cold email. The competition is so fierce, you have to do everything right. You have to cut through in order to get these meetings booked. And so you have to do everything right. Like you can't just kind of accidentally fall upon good results with cold email anymore, unfortunately.
A question from Steven that kind of ties in with one that I have. So I'll ask Steven's and then I'll contextualize it in mine. So Steven asks, what's the bigger conversion lever? Better case studies, more personalization, such as AI videos, or just sheer volume? And then my like tack on question is, how do you decide what aspect of the funnel, like what lever, again, to pull? How do you decide, as he says, better case studies, more personalization, sheer volume? Or how do you decide that your template needs work? How do you decide that maybe your service kind of sucks? How do you decide that maybe the stuff you put in that video wasn't the right stuff? Like, how do you decide what thing to optimize when you're not getting the results you want?
Yeah. Yep. Dang, man, that's a great question.
I feel like that's a whole podcast interview on its own, probably, but
Yeah, it is. If I had to pick one quickly, I would say the biggest conversion lever is going to be the sheer volume, like adding more leads at the top. Because even if you're getting 0.1% conversion, if you add another 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 email, you double, triple, quadruple the top level emails coming in, you're going to quadruple that bottom conversion rate.
so if
So
you
I
were
would say,
doing it for a client and you were getting 0.1%, you wouldn't be trying to get it to the 0.6. You would first be just trying to scale it more so than optimize it.
I would say right off the bat, the biggest conversion and the fastest is the volume. But shortly after that, man, it's like everything has to be aligned. It's like whenever you're doing conversion rate optimization for an e-commerce product, it's like, it's not like one thing. It's like 100. There's 100 small things. And so, yes, like case studies, you have to have least one case study. You have to have solid proof that you know what you're doing and you've done it in the past. Like that's critical. Personalization, I would probably put personalization as number 3 on the list. It's nice to have, and it might maybe push a conversion rate up a little bit, but it's probably down the list if you don't have the number of leads and the actual case studies for sure.
So if you're running it for Josh Starr and you had your case study, you had all your stuff, like you did all the things right because you've done this before, but you were still getting like 0.1 and you wanted 0.6, what would be the first thing you would change? Supposing that volume wasn't an option because you just scraped these and you only have a few thousand, what lever would you pull first?
Yep. I'd probably go back to the offer. So if you have everything dialed in, you have the target market dialed in, your landing pages, the videos, the case studies, the service, people want the service maybe, then I would look at the offer and the pricing on the offer too. So sometimes, and this is things that I've done for businesses that I've done. I've experimented with the pricing of the actual service too, to see maybe over 2 or 3 weeks, I'll just cut the offer price in half and say, maybe you're trying to sell something for $1,000 and I change the website, I change all the videos, I change everything, it's $500, and test, are people going to sign up? Are they going to book meetings based off of like the actual offer price being lower?
And so you have the price like findable when you do this. They could go to your website and see how much the thing would cost.
Yeah, if you're selling like your services online, as a graphic designer or like productized services, yes, like the pricing is online for sure. So a landing page, here's how much upfront you're gonna charge. Every sort of productized graphic design service, it's all the pricing is public. And so nowadays it's hard to sell something with the client not knowing how much you're going to buy, so that's one of the first things is testing the offer, how much it is, and doing that for 3 or 4 weeks. And if I get some meetings booked, knowing that the price was cut in half or, considerably lower, then maybe it's just the value that the target market is seeing. And you kind of go back to the offer and you try to increase by upselling or offering other services after they're coming on, maybe.
Right.
That's a big one. Another one is having testimonial videos of past clients, not just having like a case study that you wrote, but actual video testimonials of past clients. It's a big one. And then maybe after that, making sure that the target, like the emails the leads that you're dumping in there are targeted enough. Like you might be targeting the wrong audience, or they don't have enough budget set aside, or they're the wrong person in the company. So messing around with some of the lead targeting would probably be shortly after that.
Cool. This is really good context. And as I understand it, if I wanted to, I could go to joshstarr.co and like you could help me do this stuff, and I could bounce ideas and you help me like create a strategy for how I could do this, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So as with anything, there's that huge learning curve if you're going to do this yourself. Like you could there's all kinds of great podcasts, videos, YouTube videos, if you want to learn to do this yourself. I did that, took me a few months. Sometimes if you're running your own thing, the timeline is like, you can't wait 6 to 9 months.
Yeah.
And so if you're interested, I love sharing and teaching people how to do this. Like, it's not like this is proprietary, like there's some things that I've learned that makes that process way faster for sure. So for me, I can get results in 1 to 2 months with my clients, as opposed to if they're doing it themselves, it might take 6 to 9.
Yeah.
And so if you want to invest the time, like it's valuable for you to learn how to do it, because then you could take it and you could do it yourself over long periods of time. But a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, they just don't have the time to learn, and they'd rather say, all right, you're an expert, set this up for me and let's start getting results quicker.
Nice.
And so I love doing that, honestly.
And do you have the joshstarrdomain.co with only one R in it and it'll redirect, or should we indeed be very explicit that people have to remember to type 2 R's?
Yeah, it's 2 R's, JOSHSTARR. Yep. Make sure you type it in there. I don't even know where the 1 R goes, man.
Well, that seems like a good domain to buy if it is available.
Yeah. I tried to buy Josh, I think it was josh.com or something. Like every couple of years I try to go in there and he's like, I'll sell it for $1 million. You just have to donate it to like this nonprofit that I am a part of. Like, man, that'd be a killer domain to have though.
Yeah, it would be.
It's kind of steep.
Yeah. Well, this is great. Do you, before we go, do you have any thoughts, anything else you want to share? I'm going to check for any questions. No new ones. So anything else you want to share before we go? Parting words.
Yeah, I'd like to just speak to how valuable the DYF stuff is over the number of years. I mean, whenever I started buying the courses, the emails, everything, like it's been honestly like one of the first instrumental things of allowing me to grow my businesses. So I just want to say thank you for what you do and the resources and the input that you have, even for people that don't reach out one-on-one. You know, I've been lurking behind the scenes for, I don't know, it feels like 10 years maybe. It's been a long time. And so I just want to say thank you for that, man. Yeah,
it's cool. I talk to Brennan about this sometimes because it's like, it's easy to forget, you know, when you're just on one side of the table. And yeah, it's cool. It's cool to hear and to see you so many years down the line with this stuff having been impactful. So cheers. I'll pass that on to Brennan. I'm sure he'll be happy to hear it.
Thanks, man.
Awesome. Well, again, for everyone here, Josh has a free consult on his site. It's JOSHSTARR.co, and it'll help you determine if you're a good fit for cold email, if it'll be worth the investment, if you have like a target enough list, high enough lifetime value, and it sounds like the consultation will have you empowered enough to like run the thing on your own. And Josh, do you have like a done with you kind of thing? Like if I wanted you to teach me, but I still want to run it myself to like save costs, do you ever do that, or do you pretty much prefer done for you?
So at this time, I'm just doing done for you. But if anyone wants to hop on and do a Zoom call, I'd love to do alongside you for sure. It's no problem there at all.
Cool. All right. Well, then I will hit stop. Don't hang up. It's a thing in Riverside. You got to remember not to hang up. For everyone who came live, thanks so much for being here. Josh, I really appreciate your generosity with your time. This is really awesome. So thank you, everybody. Goodbye. Bye, Josh. See you. Thanks for being here.
Bye, man. Thanks for having me, Zach.
Yeah. What a great episode, eh? If you want to get all the show notes and links and transcript and highlights and all the cool things the show notes bring to your life, you can go to dyf.link/episode 93. It's the word episode, the number 93. And if you want to check out the DYF Accelerator community to get back scenes access, behind the scenes access, back scenes, what even is that? To expert interviews like this where you can ask them live Q&A and get one-on-one video coaching from me each week. You can learn more about that at dyf.link/DYFA. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.